basically, we'll just tell you like how we approached it, I guess. So we approached the research question very broadly and kind of took it in a very open-ended direction. So the course, as it was last year, was relating to, I guess, like the environmentalism of the poor and how like individuals can affect environmental change. So a lot of groups went with things that were either based in a specific country or like based around a particular type of activism or environmentalism. We kind of took the question in thinking about how corporations create a lot of pollution and waste in the world. So recognizing that pollution is a corporate problem was kind of our starting point. And then our question for the semester was, how can we design an office or a corporation to prevent waste happening? So a couple of our ideas were, and this is basically a summary of that, a couple of our ideas were increasing the value of an object over time, like creating an object that has references to like historical movements to give it more meaning. And so that was like an example. We used an object for each example that we made as well to kind of tie it back into design, but this was like a hand-woven basket. And then the next one was creating objects that are more interactive so that people can have a more like personal kind of interaction with maybe their corporate environment. And we looked at kind of traditional ideas about that from Japan and Aboriginal Australians. So one was this bag as well. And then the second two ideas were quite more more conceptual, I guess. In thinking, we kind of thought if we can reduce corporate waste by creating more immaterial artifacts, like digital artifacts, or like just increasing people's memory, might not really make sense so much in a quick overview, but that's okay. It's a little confusing. Anyway, so this was kind of talking about like the knowledge systems behind knowing how to make a basket, which is like the continuation of our old example. And then finally, the intangible office was our kind of conclusion idea. And for that, we made a little CAD model of like an imaginary basket to kind of represent relying more on that like memory and imagination side rather than like physical waste and physical things that become waste in an office. So that was our final presentation. And now we'll go over to our essay so you guys can look a little bit about how we wrote it and the things that we wrote about. So basically this is our abstract, and then what we really want to show you here are the diagrams that we made because we thought they were really useful for our project. So we just kind of used a bit of a diagram showing like the relationship between the two ideas at the start for our first chapter. And we've had a couple examples, which I won't go into now. And then we made another diagram for the second half of our paper, also showing the relationship between those things. And they were fun to make as well. Like they really broke up the semester into a good mix of writing and then also using like the Adobe Suite and our design skills, which I found enjoyable. Yeah, finding object examples was great. We made this image in Blender to make a diagram of a certain idea that I also won't go into. But yeah, recommend making your own images. That was great fun. This is our paper. I might hand over to Matt to talk about some other things.
Yeah, so I guess what Chatan mainly wanted us to come in and have a chat about is kind of how open-ended the assignment will be. Like we had a lot of, well, some of the groups in our class kind of found themselves stuck in a rut of like talking about stuff they didn't really want to talk about because they thought they had to keep it within the brief. But Chatan does a really good job of keeping it very open and being able to, like our essay is very loosely based on environmentalism, whereas we had other groups that were very hard set on this environmentalism thing and they just hated writing the essay at times. And we chatted to them to just change it up, make it something you actually want to talk about, and they basically thrived after that. So I'd say me coming as an engineering student, I'm already on the back foot of writing essays. Like that's just the last thing I want to be doing with my time. But because I was able to kind of talk about stuff that I had an interest in beforehand, then it just made it so much easier. It was kind of more, I found myself actually wanting to write it rather than it being more of a chore, which is what essays have normally been in the past. So hats off to Chetan for allowing us to be able to be so open-ended with what we talked about. And for like our final submission, we had like kind of a few options just to kind of throw out this idea of you can basically just do whatever you want and run with it with this subject. We had like ideas about doing a podcast for our final submission, an audio book to kind of keep with that idea of because we were all submitting this to make our essays were supposed to go into a big book by the end of it. We thought if we had an audio book, it wouldn't be a physical artifact that would then have the potential to be thrown out. It was on a digital record. It kind of fit with our theme a bit, although it didn't end up going down that path. And then we had other ideas like a CAD sculpture or 3D model of something that was kind of a bit more artistic in that respect. And then another one was just like a video, like a short skit or something like that, kind of explaining our vague overall ideas without going into too much depth, almost like a teaser for our essay in a way. So really there was like a plethora of things that we could have done with it. We just, the way things worked out, this is how we ended up submitting it. But yeah, really you guys can just do whatever you want, I'd say, and just find something that you want to write about and just run with it. And you'll have a lot of fun writing it, I'd say.
Yeah, I think just to add on that, like, for me, I think a couple of the ideas in our essay were things that I was already thinking about and like considering before this class, and it was just like a great opportunity to be able to take those ideas that I hadn't fully explored a lot and like have some time in my week to think about them. So if any of you guys have, I guess, like design theories or those kind of thoughts that you haven't really addressed yet but are interested in, I think this is a really good place to do it because, as Matt said, like Chetan is very open to basically anything as long as it's done with rigor and some sense of quality, I think. So yeah.
Like maybe to set an example, I think one of our topics was about like the meaningfulness of an object and how, like basically half our essay was like the meaningfulness of an object, and if it's more meaningful to someone, it's less likely to be thrown out, and then it's less likely to become waste. So it was kind of how can we make things more meaningful in someone's life, and then they're less likely to throw it out. So that maybe that's like, we use the examples like I have friends that have that build old cars, and for most other people they build cars that are that old that they just go straight to scrap, but they buy them all, they use them for parts, they use them spares, they fix them up, they do all sorts of cool stuff with them, and that's just like, that's their thing. They love these old cars, and it kind of keeps that that journey alive in some respects. So as you can see, it's very loosely based on the idea of environmentalism, but does still eventually tie in. So really, I'm sure you guys will have a lot of very, very different interests, and just really you'll be able to talk about something that you're very interested in, whether it's for a whole essay, whether it's for a paragraph. So just, find something and just run with it.
Cool. I might just stop sharing my screen, and then I don't know if you guys want to have a chat to us or have some questions or something. Feel free.